folks, the video you're about to see was recorded about a year ago. I recorded it with the intent of releasing it on the 25th anniversary of Visions in Sound. Now with the looming 26th anniversary, I figured I might as well do that now. So, you're going to see a few differences, you're going to see some changes. In fact, you're actually going to see Gimli on my shoulder, which is something that I had, like I said, a lot has changed in the last year. So there's going to be maybe some outdated references and stuff like that. I don't know. But in any case, sit back. I know this is going to be quite a sit, but sit back, enjoy, and hopefully you'll learn something about me, learn something about the show. So we'll talk to you soon, and on with the show.
The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it.
So where do I begin? Well, this just happens to be the 7th anniversary of my YouTube channel. So there's that. Visions in Sound. 25 years. It's hard to believe. And I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. If you've done anything for a quarter century, it's amazing. And that's the way I see this, is that, yeah, that's the way I see it. It's an amazing, people will tell me it's amazing, and it is. It's one of those amazing things that you do in life. You have to kind of sit back and go and look back and look at all the great stuff that happened. But we'll get to that. This is where it all began. And one of the things that I often talk about, or I used to talk about, was the fact in college I had this huge idea for a documentary and a book and all of these things that I wanted to do, but I just didn't. I was naive. I was naive back then, that I thought that I wouldn't be able to do it and that sort of thing. But that takes me back to even further. And I think the spark for Visions and Sounds started here. Actually, more accurately, here. This little cubby hole underneath the stairs at the place I used to live was my radio studio. I had a little platform on it. I could put record players and stuff like that, and my tape recorder. And tape recorders were huge when I was a kid. Where video cameras and phone cameras now were prevalent, tape recorders were everywhere. So you were always taping stuff. You were always getting little silly skits and stupid stuff and just insane spoutings and such. But it was fun, and you could play it back and you could just laugh your ass off when you were a kid. And that's where it all began. It began with those silly radio shows, CKRD in Ontario. I had no idea what I was talking about. That's where it all began. That's where the spark of Visions and Sound comes from. It comes from those little radio shows that I did in my basement. And this would bubble through a couple of times here and there. I would do little commercials, like Crunchola cereal, the cereal with a pop to it. It was that kind of stuff. But the one thing I remember specifically, and this was something that happened in the later, it was either grade 11 or grade 12, I can't remember which. We were reading the play Mr. Roberts. And there's a portion in there where I knew I was going to college, or I knew I was headed to broadcasting. That was the thing. I knew I was headed to some kind of broadcasting, whether it was television, whether it was radio, whatever. But I knew I was headed there. So I asked the teacher specifically, when we get to this point where they talk about the when they do the radio broadcast, there's a radio broadcast with a British guy, a British voice, and that sort of thing, and there was that. So we got to the point, I put on the British accent, and I did it, and I got applause I think for the very first time, at least that I can recall. It was the kind of thing that you don't forget. Both all my classmates had the hand to the ear, the way they used to do I guess where you'd hold your headphones in place or whatever. It was that kind of thing. So there was that. I was a published author. I mean, my poem about hockey pucks is legendary, I'm sure. It's probably sitting on somebody's shelf somewhere. Like I've got the book. It's a book of poetry. And it was, I can remember it. Pucks. Round, flat, zooming, scoring, flying, bouncing off the post. Pucks. That was the poem. But it got published in a book of poetry that a lot of people saw. My teacher, Mrs. Hers at the time, you said, hey, you're a published author. That meant something. But yeah, back to Visions and Sound and the whole radio thing. Yeah. The problem is that I really didn't get into the whole broadcasting thing. Now, I'm talking about radio and television at this point. I didn't really get into the whole broadcasting thing until much, much later. Like in grade 10, 11, and 12. And the last year, I needed an arts credit. Because I didn't take anything else. And one of the arts credits they offered was film. So I took the film course. Did exceedingly well. I wasn't a grade A student. I was good at what I did and crappy at what I didn't do very well. So there was that. But all during this whole time, Visions and Sound was kind of back here in the background. I have to credit my friend Andy Chernko. If it hadn't been for him, he would not have introduced me to television's greatest hits. And all of that. Eric Kunzel, Star Treks and Star Treks 2. Huge albums that were very influential. I could go back even further. I remember the very first early, before Star Wars, before any of that, was, I think it was 74 was SWAT. And then 75, 76 was the theme. Well, this was this theme. So yeah, it was television themes. And there was nothing at the time. I do remember as well Disney records. Orange little Disney records came in a set of 12, and they had um, all of the themes from the various films on them, and that sort of thing, and maybe some extra music. So the seeds for visions and sound were always there. That was the thing. The thing is, though, and there are some regrets in those early days, is that I never went to drama club, never really went to the dramatic places, the places that I thought would foster the ideas of performance and that sort of thing, things I needed. Because in those days, I was a shy kid, a bit of a goofball, I will admit, but I didn't draw attention to myself. It wasn't one of those stories where I was the class clown or the comedian where you drew attention to yourself. No, you tried to stay out of the spotlight as much as you possibly could, because if you got into the spotlight, it gave people reasons to pull you down. Bullies and all of that was very much on my mind. I'd have to rush home to get to try and make sure that I didn't run into the bullies. And it happened. I would run into the bullies, and they would, steal my hat, take stuff, that sort of thing. Try to throw my hat into a tree, that kind of thing. So there was all of that going on. To be honest, I honestly thought I'd be getting into law enforcement. But that wasn't a thing. That wasn't the thing that was happening. So, continuing on, like I said, getting into college. High school was okay for me. I won't say it was great. It was okay. It did foster some of those early things. Like I said, commercials would come out. I did write a story about nuclear war that got published in another magazine, in a school-based magazine. Long story. I read it in front of a group of people. The one thing I do remember is that the podium that was there. There was a point in the story where it got to the point where I hit the podium. The podium was pretty rickety at that point, and there was worry about structural damage, but that didn't happen, because that would have been embarrassing. So yeah, college years. Actually, you know what? There was another calling for me before college, and that was the later years of high school. I got a co-op at the education center, and they had a little television studio there, and that was fun. I remember going to CKCO TV for job shadowing. And the one thing I will take away from all of that was I actually asked if I could sit in and watch in the control room to watch a recording of the news. And about partway through the news, the director or the producer, I can't remember who, turned around and said to me, "You don't want to do this." I ended up doing it anyway. Yeah, from 89 to 2004, I was in television. And that was all when I was going to college as well. And I remember my supervisor, Margot, telling me that this was the job that I originally got was for Master Control. And she told me without any hesitations, this is not a summer job. This is not something that you just, It's not a summer job. So I ended up being there, like I said, 15 years. Produced a lot of good programming and produced a lot of boring television, like council meetings and that sort of thing. So yeah, there was that, all of that kind of happening. So the years in television went well. It got really stressful. And then I moved on and ended up falling into theater, which was something that was very interesting. Drayton Entertainment. The option was, because of my television background, they were doing a kind of an in-studio look for the play, or for the show. Was it Twist and Shout? The British Invasion. Fun show to do. I had an absolute blast. It was one of my first. It was my first theater credit. I was great. The show was fantastic. I had such a blast. But it was those years that I spent at the theater in London, Ontario, the Grand Theater in London, Ontario. 2 shows. I remember doing 2 shows there. Twist and Shout and Legends of Rock and Roll in 2010. And if you've never been on stage before, I will say this. There is a point at the end of the show where I had a camera, I went on the stage, and I shot the audience. And they would appear on the 2 monitors that were in the theater. But you feel the energy from the people and the appreciation of the show coming from that, the applause. It was addictive. So there was a reason why I went back in 2012 and that sort of thing, to kind of recapture that. But with my job at the radio station, I could not continue with the show. It was a shame. But there was that. But yeah, going back to my college years, I did those 3 years taught me a lot. I did do some radio. Mostly my thrust was television. I was going to do television. But I ended up in radio. And the call of radio is weird. Because again, I'd been doing my show, well, back in 1999 and the early 2000s. It was Paul Harriott, a programmer at the station, who was also a volunteer with the television station I worked for. And he said, well, why don't we do a show on soundtracks? And I thought, okay, sure. So I'll gather together a bunch of things. I actually did an interview, which is, there was a movie coming out called The Nature of Reality. And it was shot locally. And it had a soundtrack done by local artists and a single composer. I interviewed the composer. I interviewed the producers. I interviewed the record producer. I interviewed Matt Osborne, who was who performed one of the songs on there. So I put this together, and in those days it was tape. It was reel-to-reel tape that we used. And I mean, that was the thing about CKMS, which is with the radio station that was there, was the fact that it was kind of the transition between analog and digital. So there was actually what was it called? It was what was the name of that program? It was the audio equivalent of Final Cut Pro. It was anyway. It was a digital editor, And but it was not the easiest thing to use in those days. It was very cumbersome. Pro Tools. It's called Pro Tools. And you could do certain things on it. And I remember working on the better part of an evening trying to get a section of one of my features, and this was to fade between the two sources. Now you can do it like quick, easy, no problem. Now I could do it with my eyes closed. But in those days, I was learning. So then I put in an application for Visions in Sound. And Visions in Sound, the name actually comes from a friend of mine, Mark Ryan. And Mark, I don't know, he just said, why don't you call your show Visions in Sound? And I thought, hey, that's great. Do you mind if I use it? No problem. So there you go. So that's where Visions in Sound comes from. Though the more I think about it, the more brilliant I think the name is. And I'm not just patting myself on the back because of that. You think about it. And I'll leave that with you. Think about Visions in Sound and all that it means. And that sort of thing. And it covers everything. It covers movies. It covers TV. It covers video games. It covers parks and medieval times and all of the places where music comes from. So, like I said, advanced warning. I posted the latter ones with my friend Scott Edward, and Scott and I had a blast with Paul Harriet and that sort of thing, and so he did the first couple of shows with me. He would sometimes show up, sometimes not. But before we get into that, I do remember the call. I got a call from, I believe it was Ava Rookie. She was I can't remember, she was music or something there. She was a higher up at the station. And I get the call, and she says to me, or was it Terry? It was one of the two. I got the call saying, can you start your show on Friday? And silly me, I go, can I have a week to think about it? And I got told, in no uncertain terms, if you do not start this week, if you do not start on Friday, the opportunity will not be there. Friday was kind of what I was looking for. It was just before the weekend. You know, people would either be going into the weekend, going out that night to watch movies that I had talked about on the show, or that sort of thing. So I kind of very hastily put together a first show, and it was just kind of an introduction. And those early shows, I tried to scatter everything I could into those shows. And then I suddenly realized first show. Here's a little excerpt.
We didn't actually tell him where to go, but he still does his show on Thursdays. But we're here now. We're going to show everybody that soundtrack music is not just background music. It's a viable
entertainment source.
Thank you. I was going to say that, but thank you for filling in my words for me. So here we are. What we had just heard was kicked off the show theme from Superman by John Williams, and what we just heard was called "Battle in the Mutara Nebula" from Star Trek II by James Horner, also known for his Titanic work and other stuff like that. This was his early stuff. So that was some of his early stuff.
It was a request from 6 months ago.
Exactly. Actually, the first time we did this show...
mention that.
Yes, I should mention that. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. First time we did this show was about, first time I did the show anyway. We got a call and somebody said, can you play something from Star Trek II? And it sat in the back of my mind. We didn't get a chance to do it and that sort of thing. So we finally just sort of came up and said, okay, well, for the very first thing on this, for the very first, or one of the very first tunes we'll play on the show is something from Star Trek 2. So, here we are, and what we've got coming up next, we're going to prove here that soundtrack music is not just an American thing, it's Canadian as well. We've got Lorena McKennett, and she did a song from Highlander 3. Now, this song also ended up appearing in the television series as well, but the original is probably one of the best, and here it is.
So those first shows were fun. Scott and I were having a blast, and and this is no slight against Scott because he's a dear friend. He was nearly my best man. The only reason why he wasn't my best man was the fact that in my wedding was the fact that he was out of the country, he was working, and couldn't make it back in time for the wedding. So there was that. And like I said, this is not a slight against Scott, but he had a different vision, so to speak. He had a different direction for the show. He's a very comedic person, very funny man. And he wanted to take the show in kind of this comedic direction, and I wanted to do it more informational. And keeping it informational was it was my concept, it was my show. And so Scott ended up getting a position in some place in the United States, I can't remember. And this is what he wanted. This is what he wanted to do. So we parted ways. I did my show. He went off to do things. The guy has won an Emmy for editing. So he did well. There's no problem there. I'm very proud of him. Great friend. But we had differing views on how the show should be.
Hey, Rob, happy 25th anniversary to Visions in Sound. It's been a joy listening to these shows online all the way from Hollywood, California, which is where I am tonight at the Grammy Hall of Fame Gala red carpet. Of course, I remember when you and I were the first co-hosts of that show 25 years ago. It was remarkable. And of course, it just keeps going. The music, the movies, the sounds, the soundtrack of our lives. It's Visions in Sound, and it's uniquely Rob Daniels, it's uniquely Canadian, and it's all you. Best of luck for another 25 years. Hope to see you soon, pal.
So yeah, those early episodes were a little rocky. A lot of ums and ahs and early. So yeah, those early shows were kind of sketchy, we'll say. And then time passes as time does, and those first shows got better and better. And thank you. Yeah, they did. Those shows got better and better. But it was the show on June 1st, 2001, just before my first anniversary. Just to kind of set a story, previous weeks, I got a phone call, and I'm always happy to take phone calls. But the phone call I got was from a woman. I don't remember her name. I don't think she even gave me her name. Yeah, and you know what she told me? She says, "You say and ah a lot," and then hung up the phone. And I'm like, okay. So that kind of took me back a bit, and I went, okay. So in June 1st, 2001, I scripted my first show. And it ended up becoming a semi sort of thing, something I did, because oftentimes, and I'll admit it, oftentimes I was searching for words, searching for the information. And this was pre-internet, like pre-widespread internet. So it wasn't like I could just sit on the computer and call up information instantaneously or have it, scrolling on my phone, that sort of thing. It wasn't like that. None of that at all. So it was hard. So scripting made things a little bit easier. And that June 2001 script, which oddly enough was for, I call it something to do with the Odyssey. It was about 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I wanted to make sure I had all the information correct and that sort of thing. So yeah, June 2001 was my first majorly scripted show, and then kind of from there, it kind of grew. Or like I said, I would script shows every once in a while, and then it became every second show, and then became every show. So yeah, then it makes it sound like, and I've learned that you can go off script a little bit. Years go by, and I keep thinking about the idea that those early days when I didn't script the shows, that was insane that I did that, and insane that I would think that was the right thing to do, but I did it. So yeah, the themes. Well, I started with Superman. I started with John Williams' Superman. And then, I don't know where I met Ryan. Ryan Johns came to the station one time. I think he was looking to do a show. We hit it off, found out he was a composer. He was on my show a few times. We hit it off. He writes me a theme. But he says, there's something not right, so why don't you come over and we'll talk about it. So I came over, and the theme was different. It ended very differently. So I stepped in and I went, okay, well, why don't we do this? And I played a little bit of the ending that I was looking for. One of the things I wanted was tubular bells. I wanted a tubular bell in there. And that theme survived for a number of years until 2010. And Austin Wintry, composer Austin Wintry, we were doing a 10 Scores That Changed the Industry program. And at the end, he did a medley, and he wrote me a new theme with the help of Tina Guo. So he wrote me a new theme with the help of Tina Guo. A theme I still play to this day. So there you go.
Austin Winter here. Congratulations on 25 years of Visions and Sound. It's been a privilege to be part of that for a solid 15 years of those. And here's to 15 more. Cheers. Congrats.
Those early shows were like just throwing stuff at the wall, and I mean, it was like I would fill the show with all the soundtracks that would deal with this certain subject. And then I thought, okay, it's got to be down to 5. You have to pare things down to sets of 5, and sometimes 3, and sometimes 1. You know, 1 you would do a feature on a specific soundtrack. You had to make sure that you had all the music and that sort of thing. Yeah, it was some shows were easy and some shows were not. I'll just say that. So now we're getting into the show's going on for a couple of years. Scott drops in from time to time. You know, he's making the trips back and forth from Los Angeles to Canada, that sort of thing. So it's you know, here and there, he'll drop in. And the show went on. Then it was March of 2001. And this going back before I started scripting. And that was the month and year that my dad died. And it hit me pretty hard. And I mean, the end of the show that I did, Visions of My Father, was proof of that. From what I understand, he did get to hear a couple of episodes of my show, and that was good. That was always a good thing. But yeah. Well, then there was all the interviews that I've done over the years, and I figure I've done well over 250 interviews over the years. You know, and it's just been fantastic. Now, when I first was doing the show, or was first planning on the show, what I wanted, I sent out 10 emails to 10 various composers, figuring I might hear back from like 2 of them. I ended up hearing back from all 10. When do you want to do an interview? That sort of thing. That's cool. That was a lot of fun. And in those days, I met people like, you know, James McGrath, Lou Pamonti, Norman Ornstein. It was the local. It was the Canadian composers I was mainly focusing on because, ta-da, I live in Canada. Yeah, we live in Canada. And so it was that kind of approach. It was that was my focus in those days, was get Canadian composers and talk about Canadian music and that sort of thing. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of other soundtracks and stuff that would come out. And I just remember that, you know, those interviews were so much fun. And then, like I said, it grew. It grew into composers like Mark Snow, Joe Harnell, Vic Mizzy, and just a whole bunch of other composers. And then it just kind of grew from there. And I would start talking to like Howard Shore, John Powell, Harry Gregson Williams, just Bear McCreary, and all of these now huge composers. And to me, I look back upon it and go, kind of blows the mind sometimes to think that I've spoken to all of these people.
Hi Robert, this is Michael McQuistion.
Lolita Ritmanis.
Christopher Carter. Congratulations on 25 years of Visions in Sound.
We're so excited to have been a part of your work over these years, and thank you so much for all of your support of what we do, and we wish you a great next 25.
Thanks so much, Robert.
Love
Congrats.
you.
All the best.
Hello, my name is Freddie Wiedman. Robert congratulations on 25 years of Visions in Sound. That's such an accomplishment. And we as composers really appreciate you being such an advocate for what we do and giving us a platform on your show. I've known you for a very long time and you've always been so incredibly supportive. So thank you so much for all of that and congratulations. What a fantastic milestone.
Hey, Peter McConnell here. Congratulations, Rob, on 25 years of Visions in Sound.
Hey, Robert, it's Rob Carley, and I want to say a heartfelt congratulations on 25 years of awesome work with Visions in Sound. The work you do for the composing community, for music fans, for soundtrack fans, is so important. And here's to the next 25. Congrats.
And it's still from time. Yes, I know. It's still from time to time. Just always seems to get to me. So there's, of course, we have to talk I'm going to talk very briefly about September 11th and how that changed things when it came to scripting and shows. I didn't draw attention to it. I think basically I was coming from the perspective of I don't want to draw attention to it. It's a huge happening. It's a huge thing. But at the same time, I want people to realize that life does go on and that you can rely on me to provide entertainment regardless of what happens. And I did a whole video on the September 11th thing and what happened that day and with me, so I won't get into it here. But suffice it to say that September 11th, 2001 was a huge influence on the show and the directions it took after that. And of course, like I said, it was a whole different perspective on things. I have to talk about 2005. 2005 was extremely fun. It was my 5th anniversary. And the 5th anniversary was pretty cool. I remember that. Because it was the kind of thing where I took over the station for 24 hours. Where else but a campus and community radio station, which was CKMS at the time, could I do that? Could I actually sit there and say, I'm taking over the station for 24 hours?
Rob Daniels here from the movie, TV, and video game soundtrack program, Visions in Sound. On June 10th, I'll be taking over CKMS on my 5th anniversary for 24 hours. Tune in on June 10th to hear music from your favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. That's all day on the 10th of June on CKMS 100.3 Radio Waterloo.
Hi, I'm Jeff Dana, composer of Resident Evil Apocalypse and the Boondock Saints, among other things. You are listening to Visions in Sound's 24 hours of soundtrack music on CKMS 100.3 FM Radio Waterloo.
Hello, I'm Stu Phillips, composer of Battlestar Galactica and Knight Rider, which, by the way, will become available at the end of June. It's a new soundtrack with music by Stu Phillips. You are listening to 24 hours of soundtrack music on Visions and Sound.
Hi, this is Bear McCreary, composer of Battlestar Galactica and When the Kids Are Away. You are listening to Visions in Sound's 24 hours of soundtrack music on CKMS 100.3 FM, Radio Waterloo.
Yes, 24 hours, and there was some goofy stuff that was going on. I did some yes, I know. I did some promos and some liners, and I was originally planning on doing like an hourly liner thing, and but then when it finally came to the day, it came down to the fact that I didn't want to use them. They were just kind of, I don't know. I just didn't end up using them, but there was some pretty funny stuff that went on there.
Hello, my name is Rob Daniels from the movie, TV, and video game soundtrack show Visions in Sound. You're now in hour 2 of 24 hours of soundtrack music here on CKMS 100.3 FM Radio Waterloo. Yes, I wave my private parts at your aunties.
What did you just say?
It's a Monty Pythonism. Just never mind.
Yes.
We won't be using that one, okay? Just so you know.
I am now completely devoid of brain cells.
No, I'm not. Okay. Rob Daniels here from the movie, TV, and video game soundtrack show Visions in Sound. You're now in hour 9 of the 24 hours of soundtrack music here on CKMS 100.3 FM Radio Waterloo.
Yeah, time goes on, as time does. And then, I don't know. Something happened in 2008, and it was not good.
A campus radio station could soon go off the air. University of Waterloo's 100.3 Sound FM is fighting to stay alive. CTV's Nicole Lampa has this for us tonight. Nicole, why is the station struggling?
Bottom line, Janine, money. It barely has enough cash right now to keep going, but that could change depending on a student referendum.
Bringing down a radio station it hurts everyone. Taking away the freedom of speech of people is not making your mark in whatever poli-sci or whatever course you're in. It's just wrong. Those people who brought the referendum, those students who voted, they're no longer around. Sound FM is still here though. That says something for the tenacity of the people who took over after us. And that is appreciated.
There's a documentary out there where I do feature on it. But it has something to do with the referendum and students at this Federation of Students at the University of Waterloo. They're no longer there. They're long gone. This is 2008 we're talking about here. But what happened was the fact that we were funded, we being CKMS, we were funded by the students. A $550 a month, not $550 a month, $550 a semester radio fee it was called. And the whole thing was we were kneecapped at pretty much any point where we tried to defend ourselves, because the people who tried to defend us, or with the people who tried to defend, weren't students. It was a student referendum, and we were trying to convince the student population that a radio station was viable. It was a small low power station, but it was still viable. You could come out anytime, you could have a show, you could play your music. It was that kind of thing. That was the whole idea. But because we were so far out, and I remember being out there, and my friend Scott would say, "This is where concrete goes to die." So we were way out in the middle of nowhere. Now, the place now is not in the middle of nowhere, but it's at the time, we're in the middle of nowhere. And you had to trek out there from the main campus. So we were looked upon as kind of a waste of money, a waste of $10 a year. I think it was $10 a year, $11 a year. something that we could remove from something that they could remove from the student fees, and somehow that would make things better. Well, it didn't. Or at least it didn't make it better for us. Funding dried up once once the students won the referendum, because of course when it comes to students, it's, you know, an extra $10 a year is going to help them. How? But in any case, you know what? It was the optics. It was the optics of the thing, and and I'm not going to belabor it because it was a very hard time in my life. I was president of the board of directors. We actually got a fee increase a few months before this whole thing happened. And I think that was their catalyst for saying, oh, look, they're greedy. Anyway, I don't know. And I don't know who's going to see this. And I don't care who sees this and who knows. It was a very hard time in my life. And so, again, at the end of 2008, yeah, it was just after my 8th anniversary that had happened. And it was, oddly enough, show 410 that ended the show on CKMS. And I remember that day because not only was it the end of my show on CKMS, it was the end of my employment at the station. The station was empty. It was just me. I was doing my show, which was not unheard of on a Friday afternoon. But it was weird. Everybody's gone. No one said goodbye. There was no one there to say good luck, that sort of thing. That sort of thing. I walked out when I went to the car and I drove home. Yeah. But the good thing about that, I'm pretty sure it was Coral Andrews. She helped me get a position at CKWR. And CKWR, it was great. 410 ended with the show ending on CKMS. The next week, boom, I was on another station. That was fortunate. There was no downtime. It was just a switch of stations. 2 to 4 a.m., but still a fantastic switch of stations. So there was that. So yeah, we're up to 2008 now here. And I'll tell you, those years were hard. Switching over to the new station, I have to admit, there's only been 2 times where I've actually fallen asleep during a show because of the hours. One was when the station was on Bridge Street in Waterloo, and the other time was when we were on King Street in Kitchener. The first one I don't remember. I don't remember what show it was. But it was like it was getting late, and you're sitting there, and suddenly the music's just soothing, and it puts you to sleep, which is fine. I remember waking up and going, music was still playing, which was good, but it had just been, how long was I asleep? I don't know. Then the second time was actually for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It was late, and because we had I don't remember why I fell asleep. I just remember falling asleep, and the silence alarm went off and woke me up. So that was that. So yeah, I'm going back to the composers here. The composers were the nicest bunch of people I have ever spoken to in my entire life. There were some weird ones, there were some unusual ones, but most of the composers that I've spoken to were level-headed, enjoyed my questions, had a great time. Joe Harnell, I remember he was my very first kind of big interview that wasn't a Canadian composer. I mean, Michael Dana was huge, in my opinion, because he had just done like a big film called The Sweet Hereafter in '97. So there was still that going on and that sort of thing. So talking to Joe Harnell, talking to Mark Snow, and that sort of thing, those were big interviews for me. And, you know, people like Beth Krakauer and Laura Van Leest and Forte Thaxton were huge helps.
Hey, it's Mike from Grab a Stack of Rock, and I am here today to congratulate Rob Daniels on 25 years of Visions in Sound. I am proud to have known Rob for close to 40 years, but certainly the last 25 on Visions in Sound is something to be very, very proud of. For the last 25 years, Rob Daniels has brought you the best in movie soundtracks, TV soundtracks, video game soundtracks, basically any kind of soundtrack. If I ever need information on a soundtrack, I go to Rob first and foremost. It was my absolute pleasure to start doing Visions in Sound with Rob sometime before the pandemic, in the studio, on the radio. That was an absolute blast. We did some great episodes, Spaceballs, Star Wars, The Big Lebowski, and all I can say is, Rob, here's to the next 25. Let's hope. Let's do it. Congratulations, sir. Check out visionsandsound.ca.
Hey, this is Gruesome Geddes, the host of the Anger Management Radio Show, the show that's got the metal to make the speakers quake and that booty shake. Oh, yes! I am sending a huge shout out to Rob. Congratulations for 25 years of Visions in Sound. That is phenomenal work. Keep it up. Oh, yeah!
Hey, Rob. Congratulations on your 25th anniversary. You've helped motivate me to continue my quest to sort soundtracks by mood and similarity. It's a challenge.
Yeah, believe me, Ross. It's a challenge, all right. So yeah, I know I'm skipping through a lot here, but I don't want this to go on too long. But you end up, the years go by. You know, I've tried different things over the years. I remember the show I did talking entirely like a surfer. I remember the show that I did that was a kind of a parody of The Greatest Warrior, Deadliest Warrior. That was the name of the show, The Deadliest Warrior. I called it something else, but I tried that. I did versus shows or versus soundtracks. You know, Freddy versus Jason, Godzilla versus Kong, that kind of thing. So there's all of that. And that's enough, you'd think. But it just continues. In 2019, December 2019. And okay, here's something I want to talk about. My original thought for Visions in Sound was to get to a point where I could make it pay, and that I wouldn't have to work, and that my income would come from my radio and nothing else. That didn't happen. And it got me realizing that I'm a very small fish in a massive pond where I am constantly fighting for a voice, regardless of where it was. So I realized just how small I was, and I knew that I should accept maybe the fact that it wasn't going to get any larger than this. And that came through in the 1000th program.
We're going to show everybody that soundtrack music is not just background music.
This marks the second year that I've been doing this show, and it just so happens that it coincides with my 100th episode.
Today is my 300th program, and when I look back upon all the scores I've played and all the composers I've spoken to, it makes my head spin. Oh, and there might also be a celebration of 600 shows in there too, but, well, here we are, show number 1 of 2018 and show number 900.
This December marks my 1000th show. I wanted to make the show an event. It was a celebration. 1,000 shows. Holy crap. But, and again, I don't want to put a damper on the 1,000 shows, because I did have a blast. I wanted to make it an event. So one of the things that was suggested to me was to try and get an interview with John Williams. And I've talked about this on another video, so I'll be very brief with this. I was basically told, well, first of all, I put out an appeal video. Here's just a segment of it.
Hello, my name is Rob Daniels, and I host a movie, TV, and video game soundtrack program called Visions in Sound on FM 98.5 CKWR in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I've been on the air for almost 19 years, and this December marks my 1000th show. I wanted to make the show an event, and it was suggested to me that I do an interview with John Williams. After a few attempts, I was basically advised that unless I was with a large media establishment, that I would never get an interview. That's what brings me here today. This is a direct appeal to Maestro Williams for an interview. I'm not a critic or a journalist. I'm simply a fan. Over the past 19 years of Visions in Sound, I have featured your music several times on my show. Last year, we celebrated the 40th anniversary of your score to Superman. In fact, the very first piece that I played on my show back in 2000 was your theme to Superman. Recently, we celebrated the 35th anniversary of your score to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And also featured over the years have been such scores as Lost in Space, Amistad, The Patriot, and many, many others. I realize that you're very busy with the Rise of Skywalker score. I get that. I'm only asking for an hour of your time so that this fan can speak to you, as I realize that this may be the last time that I can speak to you as an active composer working on Star Wars. I can be reached at visionsinsound@gmail.com, on Facebook, or through my website, visionsinsound.ca. Maestro Williams, your music has meant so much to me over the years. I'm really hoping we can make this interview happen.
So I put out an appeal video to John Williams, and my friend Eric Woods graciously posted it on a John Williams forum. Immediately taken down and basically told, you should leave John Williams alone. That kind of thing. It was the friggin' gatekeeping of the fans, of all people. And again, he will remain nameless, but I did get a message saying, John Williams only does interviews with large media organizations. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that with smaller ones. And I basically said, well, if I'd never tried, the answer would always be no. And it didn't go very far. The campaign did not go very far. I was hoping that it would catch on, that people would go, hey, this guy needs a chance. So it would go this and this and this and this and this. It didn't happen. And it got me to realize not how unimportant it was, but just how small it was, how small the show was, how just how small the show was. And that came through in my 1000th program. And again, I don't want to put a damper on it because that was a huge celebration, and I did get a certificate from the mayor of Kitchener and all of that. It was a wonderful thing. But 1000th program, I wanted to make it like a drop-in kind of thing, so I actually got a food sponsor. Did a whole charcuterie kind of thing, bought drinks for everybody, stocked the refrigerator at the station, invited people, said they were coming, but apparently 12 to 2 was too far to go. One person showed up for my 1000th program, and the only reason why he showed up is because I picked him up and brought him with me. So we had lots of deli meats and food at the end of the night. I drank that pop with a clear conscience, but at the same time it hurt. I had done all of this planning, all of this looking at my 1000th program, and no one showed. And I went, fine. Screw you all. Most of the things were, they were, you know what, I'm not even gonna justify this. They weren't legitimate reasons. They just people just didn't show. And that hurt. So that's a few months before I lost Dorothea. And again, I've done a video on what happened there, but we had been married in 2008, 12 years together. And we fought the cancer all along the way, and it overwhelmed her, unfortunately. I miss her. I miss her a lot. So yeah, I started focusing on mental health then. And this was during COVID. So mental health was a huge thing. And one of the things I picked up on was there's this guy on What Culture Games. His name's Jules Gill. And he'd always end his show with saying, "You are legend. You are a legend. You are a ledge. You know, never let anybody tell you that you're not. And you know, if you need help, help is available out there." So I adapted that, and I've put it on the end of my shows for many, many years now. And I honestly believe it, that you should go out and look for help if you need it. Because, you know, and I didn't mention this during the CKMS thing, but there was 2 suicides because of the problems at the radio station. And one of the suicides was on the other side, the against the radio thing. It was a mess. But again, I've already talked about that. And my philosophy in all of this is that if I can save one person, then I feel like I've done the right thing. He shall remain nameless, but someone did approach me and say, "I'm alive now because of you." So yeah, we're almost up to the kind of the end, where the story kind of ends, or rather, maybe not ends. I have to admit, there was a show I did at the end of 2023, and it was a test. It was an audience test. And it worked and it didn't. The show was called This Is the End. I put it at the end of 2023, and I made sure that it came across as if I didn't say I was ending the show, but I didn't exactly deny it either. And like I said, what I tried to do is I tried to make, and maybe it was unfair to test the audience, but I wanted to see who would come back to me and say, "What are you doing? Are you okay? You know, is the show really ending?" And I got one person, two people coming to me and saying, "Are you okay? Why is this show called This Is the End?" So there was that. And what I meant by the end, it was the end of looking back. Because up until that point, 2023, I'd always been looking back. I'd always been being held to the past. I wanted to look forward. I wanted to move forward with something. Make sure that the show had... I wanted to I think the thing I wanted to do, I wanted to reaffirm my commitment to the show. Because one of the things that Dorothea, my late wife, would tell me, and there were times when I really wanted to hang up the headphones and say, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But she said to me, she said, "Rob," she says, "you are an archivist. You need to do this because you'll drive me crazy if you don't." But it wasn't just that. She also said to me, she said, "You need to do this because people need to, you give people a destination each week that they can come to, and they can, for 2 hours, turn off their minds and have a listen to you." And that has kept me going. She really helped me realize that it's going to take a lot to knock this show down. Yeah. And even if it's not on terrestrial radio, I'll find another home for it. There'll always be a home for Visions in Sound. And that's kind of where I'm at this point. I've had great experiences over the years. I've met some great people. I've lost huge amounts of friends along the way. You know? Matt Osborne, Beth Krakauer, my wife, my dad. But when you think about it, and I know it's going to sound cliche, but it was the journey. And it continues to be the journey. And I think that's where I'll leave this. Because The show has always been about the fans and the music. It's never been about me. It's never been about my ego and that sort of thing. And I think that's what it required me to think. It's always been, the show's been adversary, lover, friend, teacher, all of these things. But it's helped me. It's kept me sane in times when I was ready to just end it. The show's for you. And I just get the benefit of presenting it each and every week. And I think that's maybe the best way to kind of end this, is to say a huge thank you to everyone. Everyone who's listened, everyone who has made a comment, given me tips, sat with me through technical issues, and that sort of thing. Visions in Sound, and I've said this before, will continue. As long as I have breath in my body and ability to continue to do the show, I will continue to do the show. And when I die, when I'm gone, I hope that people will listen to the show and get to know me through it. Yeah, you want to know me? Listen to the show. I think that's maybe the best way of approaching this. So, that's the story up till now. I mean, what more needs to be said? If you've stuck with me this long, then you know the story. And like I said, you want to know me? Watch the videos, listen to the show, because that's who I am. Visions and Sound will always be here and here and here with Gimli, but here in my heart.
I'm composer Ryan Shore. I've scored for Star Wars, Scooby-Doo, Elmo, The Muppets, and more. Congratulations, Rob, for 25 years of Visions in Sound. That is an amazing accomplishment, and I'm looking forward to 25 more. Congrats.
Hey, Rob. Eric Woods from Cinematic Sound Radio. Congratulations on 25 years of Visions in Sound. It's an absolutely incredible achievement. There aren't many people in the world that can say they've been on radio for 25 years talking about and playing the music from their favorite genre. Heck, I'm sure we can count on one hand how many soundtrack-themed radio programs have been on the air around the world as long as you have. I just want to say that it has been an honor to call you a friend. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show and sometimes steal the spotlight. Austin Wintory, remember that one? Thanks for introducing me to so much music I would have never heard unless it was on your show. You and your show are a treasure, and the people of Kitchener-Waterloo should be grateful for having a show as great as yours on traditional radio. Keep up the great work, and keep raiding those bargain bins to find some of the most obscure music and film scores ever heard on terrestrial radio. And as Carly Simon once said, no one does it better. Congratulations.
Dr. Evil from They Might Be Giants, from the Austin Powers 2 soundtrack. Well, here we are. End of the show.
Our first one is over.
First one is over. Thank goodness.
Yeah. It only gets better from here. Folks.
Yes. Hopefully that will be the case. The show is called Visions in Sound. It can be heard every day at this, or every day.
Every day.
Every day. Wait a second. Let me rephrase. Every week at this time, 3:15 to 5 p.m. If you want to get in contact with us, just on the internet, Visions in Sound 2000, all one word with the 2000 on the end.
In numerical form.
In numerical form, thank you very much. At hotmail.com. Or if you want to visit our website, it's members, little http : / all that other stuff.
No www?
No www, yes. members.home.net /3 Daniels. And that's where you'll find the Visions in Sound website.
You and your two sisters.
Yes.
And you didn't tell me about it.
Okay. Well, I'll put it in the bio just to let you know that there's things that you don't know about me. Isn't that something? There was something you didn't know about me.
Wait till you see my bio.
I can't wait. Well, to close the show,
can't the police, from what I hear.
Anyway, to close the show, we've got a cut from a film that's just come out recently, Gladiator.
A big hit.
Big hit. Huge
First
hit.
really good movie of the summer,
Exactly. Really well shot. Some of the most beautiful shots of Rome, ancient Rome anyway, that I've ever seen. Most convincing anyway. This was done, the music from this was done by Hans Zimmer, who also did Rodel Dorado.
The trippy Rodel Dorado
Yes.
you heard earlier.
And
No Cadillacs.
and stuff from Mission Impossible 2. He's been a busy guy this year, at least
Very
part
busy.
of it. Very busy.
Probably more to hear from him.
I have
later,
read that he
too.
will be taking some time off after this and just sort of relaxing.
Putting the baton down.
Exactly.
Are we going into the music now?
Well, we're just going to sort of bring it in just
let's bring in
underneath
the
us.
music here as we say our tearful farewells.
Yes. Have
To
a
the
good
thunderstorm that dominated our lives early this morning. To the car that brought me here this afternoon. To the hairstylist that dyed my hair last week. And to all you listeners out there, you know who you are. We'll see you. Well, you won't see us. You won't see me. You won't hear me. You'll hear Rob next week.
You'll hear me next week, all by myself.
And I'll come back someday soon, so sit and wait. I will come to you. Good night, my friends, and enjoy the movie Gone in 60 Seconds, and others at your local theaters.
One more thing before I go. I'd like to thank Mark Ryan. He knows who he is. He's the guy that originated the name Visions in Sound. I'd like to thank him for giving me the name of the program. And
he's not dead, despite what the music might sound like,
He's not dead, but he's out of our listening area, unfortunately. But
so he might as well be.
All right, this is Now We Are Free, which we are.
We are, and so are you.
And enjoy the next show. I'm Rob Daniels.
And I'm Scott Watkins, who won't be back next week.
Thank goodness. We'll see you later.